other words, they don't know anything about the lenses. They just spin the lenses until something becomes clear for them. They don't have to understand there's an A lens and a B lens and all this kind of stuff. They just have to say, I'm not clear, I'm uncertain, I'm curious. So that their meaning needs drive the system. That's one level of metaphor about this learner scope that I want to get into. I want to say that what we're trying to do now is develop these learner scopes as a piece of technology that's going to reside on, let's kick the lights back up for just a moment, I think. So we have this intention to develop a series of technologies, one of which I'm about to show you, that will run eventually on a television set in anybody's home, as fed by the phone companies, slow-speed CD-ROM, for those of you that are familiar with that, that would run on through Nintendo machines and game machines, that would run on MS-DOS PCs, that would run on Macintoshes, Apple IIs, and ultimately define a new kind of hardware, a kind of slate or tablet. And the idea of this is not just to provide an alternative to a book. It's not just to provide a kind of an electronic interface that's like a book, but rather to provide what we call this learner scope that I just described. Now imagine that in addition to what we've just described about the learner scope, that these children would be empowered to be able to spin the ball and go home and do all these things the way we've described, that every time they turned it, that this system was keeping track of what was going on for them, and it was flowing back to the teacher. The teacher had a teacher scope, and the teacher could see the whole class as a whole, or any one individual in particular, and begin to see, well, here's the kind of ways the students like to look at this particular thing. Here's the kind of dropouts they're having. Here's the kind of word problems they're having. So that everything that the learner's doing is flowing, being summarized, and then visualized and flowing to a teacher system, so the teacher can see the class as a whole. And again, I want to be careful here. I think that technology, in many respects, is the least important component of what we've been talking about. It just happens to be the one that's the easiest to demonstrate in some respects. The most important thing is the interpersonal dynamics. There's no question. And I want to say that if you go to really go into what is it that causes people to be unable to communicate, what I want to say is that a great deal of the difficulty between people at the communication level has to do with what they've learned at the informational level. They're conditioned. We are conditioned by information. We are conditioned by our relationship to information. We are conditioned not to inquire. Information is like a brick cage around us that we learn to accept how it works. Right? And it's conditioned us very deeply. That needs to change. That's only one of the things that needs to change. So again, we are developing a system that we call a learner interface. It's designed to be the interface through which a learner on one side and a world of resources on the other side start to evolve a learning-oriented relationship, so that everything the learner does flows back to curriculum designers. So the curriculum designers can say, look, if we really want to optimize this history course, here's the problems people are really having. Which this deals with the question of evaluation we were talking about earlier. Okay? One of the problems with the evaluative systems right now is that most of our measurements are, first of all, knowledge-oriented, not learning-oriented, and they're occurring way downstream from where the learning they refer to happened. They're not measuring the learning process in some level that can really help inform us at the facilitative level on the edge of where that learning's going on. What they're doing is measuring things that are happening way downstream. So what we've said is not only do we want to facilitate an environment in which learners can learn to tune in and trust these impulses that we've been describing, but we also have to develop an environment in which, when they do that, that is the evaluation process that flows back to inform the system as to how to improve the environment. If it isn't moving together at that kind of level, then we're firing torpedoes and we're doing statistical analysis on which ones are hitting.